Hi, hello, what's good, what's up? There comes a time in every YouTuber's career when we actually have to talk about something of substance. So this video is that. This is gonna be a little bit different from my last read-along vlog. It is really spoiler heavy, especially in the first half, and I'm not necessarily going to give you a way to jump all the way past that. There is some stuff in it that I think we need to discuss as a group, and for that reason, I cannot allow you to just jump all the way to the end. So that I don't get repetitive, I'm not at the end going to review any of the books that I read. If you want to know how I felt about them, you're gonna have to watch the whole vlog. I'm sorry, that's not how I'm usually going to do it, but there is some vital info in the vlogs themselves that cannot be skipped past. I have also done my very best to cut out as much of the white girl whining as I possibly could. By necessity, this vlog is me-centric. I am both white and cis, and I cannot film a vlog that does not center me as the main participant. So if you are averse to hearing my feelings about current events in any way for any reason, that's entirely valid and you can go. You are not obligated to watch me work through things in a semi-public way. That is not your job, but that is kind of what we have here. And I feel it would be intellectually dishonest to not show you kind of my process. So with that little caveat in mind, I'm gonna start the vlog now. I read 4 books this month, 2 compilations and 2 novels. The 2 novels that I read were Felix Ever After by Kacen Callender, Cinderella by St. Lynn, and the 2 compilations that I read were Out Now, Queer We Go Again, edited by Saundra Mitchell, and A Phoenix First Must Burn, edited by Patrice Caldwell. The vlogs I made of the novels were super spoiler heavy, but I did manage to mostly avoid spoilers for the compilations. So I'm going to provide you with a timestamp so that you can jump past the novels, but not past the whole thing. You have been warned about all of the things going on in there, and I hope you enjoy it for what it's worth. I will see you in a bit. Wow, I really don't feel like filming right now. I don't know if y'all have noticed lately, but the world is shit. I usually don't read very much at times like this because it's just so hard for me to focus on anything for like any amount of time, but I've been reading a ton recently because when I go on social media, I feel like my heart's going to explode and I'm gonna die from being so upset. And that's just not a great place to be in spiritually. The point is, I've been feeling really pressed to figure out a way to support Black lives, Black voices, Black art while being trapped fully within my home. With that in mind, I've kind of tweaked what I want to do for June. I am going to read all queer lit, but specifically I'm going to read all Black queer lit by Black authors about Black queer protagonists. And that's going to be how I do my part to, in whatever small way I can, promote Black voices and appreciate Black art and Black artists. I think that's something that I can do. So I've created a list of 4 books, but kind of not. 2 of them are novels and 2 of them are short story compilations, because I was like, first of all, 4 novels for me is a lot, and I want to make sure that this is something that I can actually get done by the end of the month. Also, 4 novels would only be 4 Black voices, and the more that I investigated queer Black authors, the more I found compilations of lots of different Black queer artists, like all in one place. One is a compilation only of Black authors, and specifically of queer Black women and non-binary folks. The other is a compilation of short stories by queer authors, some of whom are Black and some of whom are not. I'm actually trying to figure out how exactly I'm going to comment on the compilations. I don't know. I'm working it out. It's a process. I'm about to post my TBR on my Patreon so that anybody who wants to read along with me can. I've reserved one of the novels and one of the compilations through Libby. One of the compilations I have purchased, and I need to purchase the other novel. I couldn't find it on audiobook, which is how I prefer to read books. The novel came out in 2019, so I'm not sure why it's not on audiobook. Honestly, I've been having a really hard time finding it anywhere. I guess it's probably not super weird for Black queer authors to go through that. Yeah, I've been really confused as to why it's so difficult to track down, but I did find a copy of it at Copperfield's, so I'm gonna have them ship that to me. The only compilation that I can start on right now is Out Now. I guess I'll let you know my thoughts like as I go. Like I'm trying to like formulate a plan for like exactly how I'm gonna talk about the compilations, but I'll figure it out, I guess. Hi, I spoke too soon. I, as predicted, am having a really hard time reading, but books. Because I don't know if you've ever been incandescently wrathful, but it makes it really hard to like sit down and do one activity. I'm not gonna get into my mental state because I don't think that that adds anything useful to the conversation except to say I'm having a really hard time, and that's my update. So I started Felix Ever After. I like it. It's actually, I think it's exactly what I need right now. It's just extremely upbeat. It takes place in New York during Pride Month. It kind of feels like a Disney Channel original movie, but the main character is a trans guy. It's going well so far. I'm about 2 chapters in, so I'm gonna listen to a little bit more. It's really narration heavy so far. There's a lot of telling and not a lot of showing, so we'll see how that pans out. So far I'm enjoying it. I think it's gonna be a pretty quick read. It's giving me hope that I can actually do this thing that I have set out to do, so that's good. So here's the thing, I lied. I did not end up reading any more yesterday. I read a little bit today. I'm on like chapter 5 or 6. I'm like getting through it in like little fits and spurts. And you know how I was saying that it was like super upbeat and like fun and summery? That was before Felix walked into the lobby of their high school where somebody had put up a bunch of pre-transition photos of him, all of which included his dead name. There is an immense pressure that Felix feels in his senior year that like I deeply remember. Even though his teenagehood isn't looking very much like mine, it does reflect, I think, like some aspect of the teenage experience, like with a good degree of accuracy. I don't know how I feel about like this new plot that like Felix has become convinced that it was one of his ex-friends who did the gallery, even though there's very little evidence of that, and the only real evidence is that Felix doesn't like him. And now the plan is to catfish this guy on Instagram. I don't know. It does feel like the kind of scheme that a vengeful teenager would come up with. So props for that. I'm gonna listen to a little bit more, and I'm not lying this time. It's moving right along now, so I do feel like this will be a quick one. Hey, this time I actually did what I said I was going to do and listen to more of the book. I think I'm on chapter like 10-ish. I don't know. He knows it wasn't Declan now, and he is starting to explore his identity more. His and Ezra's relationship has kind of faded into the background for now. Here's the thing. I would say that this feels like a book about teenagers that is for a teenage audience, and specifically a teenage queer trans audience, a teenage queer trans audience of color. That's okay. Like, it, you know, not every book that I read has to be like for me, but it puts me in this weird space where I'm like, how do I rate it? Right now, my enjoyment of the book is very plateaued. I'm not thrilled by any of it. I like Felix as a character. I think Felix is interesting. It's definitely not difficult to listen to. Like, I'm just very middle of the road with it. Your mileage may vary on that. If you see yourself reflected in Felix, his very existence is going to mean so much more to you than it does to me. I recognize that. And so it puts me in this position where I'm like, well, then what is my responsibility as a reader who can appreciate how immensely important the existence of this book is? Books like this did not exist when I was in high school, or at the very least, they did not exist where I could find them and access them. I have to think that, you know, for people who more closely identify with Felix's position, this book is revolutionary in its very existence. And so I'm trying to figure out how I can honor that when, like, I just don't feel very strongly about it at all. It feels very much like I Wish You All the Best. It's an entire book about identity. It is a very cute, very modern, very informed narrative about coming to terms with one's identity. And, you know, that's just not where I personally am at in my journey. There is definitely a problem with telling over showing. We are still doing a lot of telling over showing. One of the reasons why it feels like tinged with like a slight superficiality that I think is so endemic to things like Disney Channel original movies is that for every little thing, for every emotion, every thought, every action that Felix takes, he turns to the camera and says, "This is why I'm taking that action. I'm telling you what the story is about. I'm telling you what the conflict is. I'm telling you my backstory." And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, except that I personally find it boring. I don't think there is necessarily a right way to create a story. I think there is a way that appeals to me the most. And I think that what I'm dealing with this story is that I'm very interested in it existing and very interested in it finding the people that need it, that want it, that will see themselves in it and just be so happy and feel so represented by this book and by the main character. I am so interested in that happening. At the same time, I personally am not connecting with it very much. I don't hate it. It's perfectly readable. I think it's very cute. I think it's very charming. I just don't have a lot of strong personal feelings about it. So I'm basically trying to figure out how to talk about it and make sure that I emphasize just how much I think this is a me thing and not an inherent problem in the book. Like, I actually don't think it's a problem at all. I just don't think I'm the intended audience, and that's okay. I just don't know how to rate it with that in mind. How to address the fact that I think it exists for an audience that is not me, while also reconciling the fact that I currently am the audience. I don't know why I feel so differently about like books like this that are told in this way versus something like The Half of It, which is like a teenage-based identity narrative that I cried. Like, that shit fucked me up. I don't know why. I don't know why that was like so much. I don't know why that spoke to me so much more. Could it be that it's about somebody who is of an identity that's closer to mine? I don't know. God, am I dumb? Am I stupid? I really liked that passage where Felix was talking about painting, like doing his painting. I thought that was really cool. I think a lot of the time when you are writing a book and trying to describe other types of non-written art happening, I think a lot of people are really bad at that. That whole passage it's very good. Let's just jump back into plot stuff. My prediction is Ezra likes Felix. I feel like I can see that coming a mile away. Ezra likes Felix. He's always liked Felix. That was what broke up him and Declan. That, I think, is where we're going. I talked last video about how I really hate dishonesty tropes. Not just in queer lit. I hate them in all media. Anytime that you have a problem that could just be fixed very simply and quickly if two characters could just communicate better, when it would literally just be the difference between them in a moment telling the truth and not telling the truth. I think that conflict is fundamentally weak and boring. I hate it. This book has that in spades. I do think this book does a good job, better than a lot of books that I've read recently, at justifying like why Felix doesn't say anything. Like, Felix is not really a kind of person who like makes complex plans in advance. He's a little impulsive. Like, it does feel justified in the moment, like by his emotional state, like why he doesn't say anything or doesn't tell the truth when asked, if that makes sense. It does feel like there is at least a personal justification that like means something, but by and large, I hate that type of conflict in a plot. I think it's boring and overdone. That is the heart of so many conflicts in this book. But you know what? It's fine. It means they will be fairly easily and predictably resolved at some point. So now they're like trying to figure out who is the person who put up the gallery because they know it wasn't Declan. So I'll be interested to see who it is. I think it's Marisol. And I think that because she is the worst. Hi, hello, I'm back. I just got to chapter 16. I think I'm done for the day. They just had like the big confrontation with Marisol and bitch got hers. The downside is now I have no idea who put up the gallery. Like, I have no clue. I really hope it's not gonna be like a wild twist where like it was Ezra, because that doesn't make any sense to me. And also because I love him. I like Ezra so much. I feel like right now I think Ezra has top billing for like my favorite character in the book. Like, I love him. I love how incredibly supportive he is and like how protective he is of Felix, and like how every time Felix is like, somebody did something fucked up to me, like he holds on to that information for so long, and then anytime he like tells Ezra about it, Ezra's like, really? hold on, and then just goes and like ends somebody's entire career. It's so good. It does feel like they're not gonna get together, and like he's gonna get together with Declan instead, and like I don't really care about Declan as a character. Like I'm not that interested in him, so not super into that. I would prefer if he got with Ezra instead. We love a good enemies to lovers trope in this house, you know what I mean? But Declan's just like, boy's got nothing. He's got nothing going on. I'm not that interested in who he is as a person. I'm very interested in who Ezra is as a person. Anyway. Hello again. It's Saturday. No, it's Sunday. It's Sunday now. I've just finished Felix Ever After. It was fine. I don't know that there's any point at which like I specifically like started really liking it. Hi, what can I do for you? So I do think that the connectivity issues are mine. I think this book is so important for the people that it is for that like I think it would be socially irresponsible to pretend that it is less good than it is. I also think that there is something to the fact that like a book can be objectively good even if it's not like one that you liked very much. That's not to say that I didn't like it. I did like it. Just like not that much. I pivoted a little bit upwards based on the fact that like the plot actually went in a direction that I enjoyed. I would have really hated if Felix and Declan got together and like it was just all cool, because even though Declan did evolve into a character that like I was like, okay, you have depth. He never evolved into a character where I was like, yeah, you and Felix have a lot of chemistry and you should be together. I'm glad that the plot backed me up on that. Austin being the person who put the gallery up while also like people like Hazel and Marisol continuing to like be around in the periphery as people who are like just dicks to Felix because he's trans. I think that really works. I thought that did a lot to paint this real picture, it felt like, of what it's like to experience prejudice, for one. The world is in fact full of people who secretly don't think you have a right to exist. And they won't come out and say that a lot of the time, but they do feel it. The reveal was kind of came out of nowhere, but like it did feel good that like he was the person. The fact that the perpetrator of this awful thing is a white cis gay kid who really does think that like their immense social privilege by being like wealthy and white and cis is totally overridden by the fact that they're gay. Oh honey, that tea is scalding. I really liked kind of the reversal of like Felix taking back the gallery and like with his own work. I thought that was really cool. I thought his conversation with his dad at the end was really sweet, like genuinely. I thought him getting together with Ezra was really cute. Overall, I think just a very competent book, just a very well put together book, and like fun and interesting. And I think especially for the intended audience, just like really truly very special. Look at this. Okay. All right, I'm giving it 4 stars. Gatsby says hi. Yeah. Okay.
Hold up.
I forgot. I was talking about something. A cat showed up and I forgot. So that's one book down. I've got the 2 compilations, one of which is coming on Libby, I think in like a week, and one of which I already have. So I could start on that today. The second novel should be on its way. We're just waiting on that. And I have like a few other things that I'm reading secretly, but we're gonna talk about those in a different video. Hi, just when you thought my mental state couldn't degrade further, we keep reaching for the stars. We keep pursuing the next big mental breakdown. This month has sucked. The world is garbage and I have tunneled into a pit of despair. It is late in June at this point. I am like starting to really stress about being able to like even get this done, partially because one of the books that I ordered has not gotten here yet, and another one of them has not freed up on Libby. I'm gonna look at Libby. I'm gonna see how much longer I need to wait on that one, but at this point I'm not gonna get it done unless I buy it. So I'll just buy it, and I'm really struggling. I feel so tired all the time, and I feel so fatigued and just devoid of any energy or joy or passion, and I'm just in it right now. And I am putting that out there because I'm willing to bet that we're all kind of in it right now. It's probably an experience that you guys will relate to, that I am just so incredibly sad all the time. I just feel totally helpless and like there's nothing I can do. I don't feel like I can go to a protest, which is what I would usually do. And I'm unemployed, so I can't donate in the way that I usually would. And at the same time, like it just doesn't feel like a good excuse. And I'm just trying to do what I can, and I want to be content that is enough. I just don't feel like it is. I'm trying very hard to make it so that this is not about me. I don't think that me, on what limited platform I have, getting up and saying, this is really hard for me, I don't think that's a worthwhile contribution to the conversation. I'm just gonna do my best. And yeah, I almost just started crying, so I'm gonna not do that because I don't think my other novel is gonna get here on time. I started reading Cinderella. That's Cinderella by St. Lynn. I started it last night and I'm already about halfway through it. It's so fucking delightful. It's a Cinderella retelling where Cinderella is a fat black trans woman, and I am so delighted by it. Like, it's so enchanting. It's so whimsical and full of joy. I just really like it. I had a moment last night where I was reading it where I just laughed because I was having such a nice time reading it. I think if I put my head down, I can read the compilation that I do have as well by the end of the night, and that would give me 3 out of the 4 books that I was planning to read, and then I can purchase the last compilation tomorrow and get through it, is my hope. I've only been able to find one of these books on audiobook. I think it might be worth having a conversation about how incredibly inaccessible these books have been in comparison to a lot of other queer lit that I have engaged with. I engage with queer lit all the time. It's pretty much what I read, period. I haven't talked a lot about it on my channel, but about 2 years ago, I basically made a conscious decision that I was not going to read any books about straight couples anymore, and I live by that.
And I live by that.
As a result, I've read a lot of queer lit in the last 2 years. I have never struggled so much to actually find the books that I want to read as I have trying to find queer black literature. I think that's that. I do want to spend some time reading some more historic queer black literature. I haven't read any Langston Hughes, for example, and I would really like to. That's something that's kind of on my mind. Anyway, I'm gonna go read the rest of this book and just try to power through. Hi, hello, I'm back. So I just finished Cinderella by St. Lynn. Honestly, this is one of the stronger Cinderella retellings I've ever seen. Ella is a trans girl, well, a young trans woman who has been left in the care of her stepmother Eleanor when her father passes away. Eleanor refuses to acknowledge that she is a woman, dead names her, refuses to call her by the right pronouns, treats her like a servant, very much like the original story, and just has an immense disgust and contempt for who she is as a person. The prince in this story is a princess who is also a black woman named Elisabetta. Ella is, I think, actually one of the most distinctively characterized Cinderellas I've ever seen in my life. She is immensely practical and sweet, very methodical, but also a little bit shy, inexperienced in presenting the way that she wants to, and so is a little bit self-conscious about doing so in public and about getting people to accept her for who she is. She's characterized so distinctly and so quickly, I had really genuine affection for her, from very early on. The glass slipper in this one is a hybridized rose that she has, which I thought was so cool. It's a rose hybrid that her dad created. She continues to cultivate it after his death, and obviously it's an immensely precious thing to her. When the princess rolls by, she hops out and she's like, hey, you're cute. Do you want to come to my ball? Ella's like, I mean, yeah, sure. Ella gives her a cutting from this rose, and later on when they go to the ball, the princess is wearing a corsage of the cutting of the rose. When Ella inevitably gets kicked out of her house, which is what happens, she doesn't get locked in a tower, she gets thrown out of her house. Her mom basically puts her in a carriage and tells them to just drive until the money runs out and then dump her on the side of the road. Ella, after this obviously this is a horrible thing that happens, but she also picks herself up and is okay, well, the good news is I've escaped that abusive situation, so now I can move forward and rebuild. And Ella's a good good character. And like, I just like her so much. What a sweet, good person. It's a genuine joy to read about her starting to be able to share relationships with other women and be herself openly. There's so many like small moments of platonic intimacy between her and her female friends, which I think is just so restorative. Her relationship with the princess is like based on something. It's based on mutual interests and like mutual attraction, and they both think the other is really cool. And the princess from the very beginning is like, yeah, I know you're trans. Like, you presented as a man when I met you, and now you're presenting as a woman, and I'm so cool with that because I think you're a really cool person, and I think like I just like you a lot, and I think that's very yeah. The story is not immensely complex. It very clearly conjures the aesthetic of fairy tales. The conflict is relatively simple, and certain plot developments are extremely convenient, but they're convenient because they're like magical. The universe is bestowing something wonderful on somebody deserving, which I think is like a really nice thing that happens in fairy tales. A common convention of most fairy tales is that people get what they deserve. That's not true in life, but that's one of the reasons why those fantastical elements feel so good. Fairy tales allow for a universe that smiles upon those who are worthy, the hardworking and the pure of heart. And I think that's like really like a very genuinely sweet idea. As I was reading it, I was just thinking about how much people deserve to be able to see themselves in stories like that, to see themselves as the person upon whom the universe smiles because of, you know, just who you are. I think Black trans women deserve to have their own fairy tales. Putting Black trans women in this place to see themselves in a fantastical, magical world where the universe itself is like, you deserve happiness, you deserve to have nice things, you deserve to be loved and seen as who you are, you deserve to be surrounded by people who feel that way. I think that is so fucking cool. It doesn't need to be like super complex because it's Cinderella. Like, everybody knows the story. It can just be Cinderella, but Cinderella is a trans woman. Like, it doesn't have to be crazy different. I know I really went hard on Most Ardently for like a lot of the things that I'm praising this book for, and all you need to know about that is that Most Ardently did that badly, and this book does it well. It's very nice. It's just a very nice book. It's a delight to read. You can read it so quickly. I highly recommend it. I think it's like worth picking up. Do it. It's super cute. It's so cute. I'm halfway done. The Out Now compilation, I'm gonna try to read that by the end of the day also. I'm halfway done. So we're counting that as a win. Now, at what angle do I look like I have a jawline? Hi, hello, what's up? Really, like, getting close to the end of June. If I put my head down, I could get through these two compilations that I still have to do. I'm about to purchase the other one on Kindle. I've had a hold on it pretty much since the beginning of June, and it's still several weeks out. I'm buying that shit, I guess.
Yeah, I started using Libby this month, and so far, I want to like it because it's, you know, it's a library. It's access to ebooks for free, but like I have to wait so fucking long to get the books that I want to read that it's like functionally...
Like, it's very useful, it's just not very timely. One thing that's really been holding me up on reading the compilations is not just that I don't have one of them, it's also that I'm not really sure how I'm going to review them. What I'm doing for Out Now, which is the first compilation that I'm reading, Out Now is not just Black queer authors. I am only going to be reviewing in this video the stories by Black queer authors. I'm gonna go back and read the other stories also, but I'm only going to be reviewing those stories for this video, and so it might take me a little while to get my full review up on Goodreads. So far, I am liking it. I'm about, I think 3 or 4 stories in. I'm really liking the general tone of it. I think that most of the stories that I've read so far are immensely hopeful. They are very focused on a positive queer experience. I think so many times the queer experience can be defined both by media and by actual queer folks as deeply linked to suffering on the basis of queerness. Even though like I can in some ways share in that, I think that it's so often a part of our stories that I get really exhausted by it. Reading a whole bunch of stories that are fundamentally hopeful and uplifting and like just see queer folks just in the world like as we are living as people, I think that's really cool actually. It's been a very nice and easy read. I've been taking notes on each story just to help me like remember them all because there are quite a few of them. So the first story in the compilation is Kick Push Coast by Candace Montgomery. This one is about a skater, a non non-binary queer skater who is really kind of struggling with their identity. The metaphors are very like pointed between skating and coming to terms with one's identity, struggling and never giving up even when you fail over and over, to like find a label that fits you or a situation that's comfortable for you or an identity that feels right. The idea of like being brave even when you're pretty sure you're gonna fail, threading the needle between trying too hard and finding something that feels right. And also like the joy of being surrounded by often anonymous strangers who will celebrate your growth just because you all kind of have that struggle in common, which I think is pretty endemic to my experience of the queer community also. It's really cute. It's a really cute story. I actually think it's one of the shortest stories that I've seen in this compilation. It felt very short, even in comparison to other stories that I'll talk about. Next one I read was Victory Lap by Julie Winters. This is actually, I only read the 2 last night. It's a little meandering at the start, like there's a lot of front loading of information that is innocuous and will not matter, but it is really like saccharine sweet. It's really, really cute story. I think it's kind of telling that I can't remember offhand a single story starring a queer protagonist where their relationship with their parent is so immensely positive and where the parent of their own volition like goes out and like does a lot of work to be the advocate that their child needs. I definitely haven't read it between a Black queer boy and his Black father, and I think that that representation is so valuable, even in like a really short medium like this. Like the romance is cute, but it pales in comparison to the father-son relationship in this story. I really liked his dad. His dad's very cool. I think there are lots of stories about a child working hard to support their family, but I think there are fewer stories where that goes both ways, where a child works really hard to support their family and their family actually does a lot of work to support them as a person and like really see them and show them that they are loved and do a bunch of growth without the child having to ask, so that they can be a staunch and supporting advocate of theirs. Loved it. I thought it was really sweet. Think I can get through the rest of this in time to be done with it by the end of June. I have had an unceasing headache for the last 2 weeks, so I'm sure that's not related to anything that's going on right now. Hi, hello. I have to film this now or I'm just never going to. So, approximately a millisecond after I finished my last video, Libby did get me the compilation. So for the last several days I've been reading Phoenix First Must Burn. I do like it. It is a compilation by all Black creators. I think all women and non-binary folks. Very much kind of like what I was looking for in terms of rising to this challenge I set myself. Not all the stories are queer. In fact, the vast minority of the stories, so I'm about halfway through it, and so far I think only like 2 out of however many stories I've read have been about queer characters, which is too bad because in Out Now I could kind of find the stories that matched the criterion that I'd set up for this challenge. In this compilation I can't know until I get a certain amount of way into a short story, and usually then I'm so invested that I'm like I just want to see it to the end. So it is much slower going through this one than through the last one. Like it is the last day in June now. But as much fun as I'm having like reading these stories, I just can't help but feel like, I don't know, just like my time might be better spent reading stats. In fact, I might take some time right now to just go do that. So I'll be back in a second. Holy shit. Let me catch you up real quick as to where we're at. I mentioned that I was gonna go read some stats. I've done that, and I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about them in a second. I'm not quite through this article, and I really want to get to it. I just need to read you something. Let me catch you up real quick. I'm reading John the Correlator's article on Medium about the New York Times bestsellers list, and essentially the author went through and recorded 129 weeks worth of data from the New York Times bestseller list to kind of break down what authors landed on it, and did a data analysis for debut titles published between December 24th, 2017 and June 8th, 2020. And the author was going through the race categories assigned to authors from this list based on how they self-identify, like Afro-Latinx, Black, East Asian, Latinx, Middle Eastern, Southeast Asian, South Asian, unspecified, or white. There is no category for Indigenous authors because no titles by Indigenous authors, debut or no, made it onto the list.
Holy fucking shit. In 129 weeks, there has not been one Indigenous author on the New York Times bestseller list? What the fuck, dude?
Hey, I'm back. Don't talk to me about my makeup. It's fine. Everything's fine. I'm fine. You're fine. It's all good. So I said I was gonna go read some stats and I'm gonna talk to you about them now. I've been talking this entire video about how it's been kind of difficult for me to find books out with Black queer protagonists that are written by Black queer authors. And I think on some level, we all know why. Fewer Black authors get published, fewer queer authors get published, kind of a foregone conclusion that there will not be an abundance of Black queer literature available to people. It isn't to say the books don't exist, it's just to say that there are way fewer of them than there are about cis, straight, white people. And you could just kind of leave it at that. But I started to get really interested a few days ago in trying to understand why, because it doesn't end there. It just all adds up, makes some stuff rattle around in my brain bucket. It feels like there's probably some data behind all this, right? That's how systems work, is their systems. It's not just like one racist homophobe holding back the tide of Black queer literature that we deserve. So let's talk statistics. So if you've looked into this at all, you probably know about this survey from Lynn Books. Lynn Books is a diverse book publisher that created the Diversity Baseline Survey in 2015. Now, the Diversity Baseline Survey is pretty much what it sounds like. It's meant to quantify the diversity in the publishing industry. And if you've looked into this at all, you know that like this is the survey that everybody cites, mostly because this is the survey that started to actually document any of this stuff. All of this stuff existed before it became documented, but this survey appears to be, from the research that I've done, which taking into account has only been for the last few hours, this survey does seem to be kind of the first of its kind in documenting this stuff. Its findings are not great. As of 2019, the publishing industry is 76% white. It's also 74% cis women and 81% straight. That gives you kind of an idea of who the tastemakers are who get to decide like what books get published. That's, I think, why it's important to look at the metrics of the publishing industry. It's very easy to think that the books that exist in the world exist because they were written and no other reason. I don't know that this is mind-blowing information, but a large percentage of books that actually do get written don't actually get published, at least not traditionally. And that is important because it means that there is a mechanism to books getting published. There are people who control what books get published and what books don't. And what this survey points out is that those people are overwhelmingly white, overwhelmingly cis, and overwhelmingly straight. A bunch of you have probably been paying attention to the hashtag publishing paid me, where authors have been sharing the advances that they got from their publishers in order to expose huge gaps between first-time unknown white authors' advances and the advances of well-established Black authors, specifically authors who have an established fan base, people who will reliably buy their books. Publishing advances are essentially based on publishers hypothesizing about how well a book will do, based very much on speculative, not real bullshit information. So these advances don't reflect a reality of like, this is how many units Black authors can move versus white authors. What they do reflect, though, is the limited imaginations of the overwhelmingly white, cis, straight publishing industry. The upper limits of what the publishing industry thinks Black authors are capable of making back. It's not about sales projections. It's about the worth that you place on the work of writers of color, specifically Black writers. And you have to think that in a system that is overwhelmingly white, those writers will be valued less. I also took a look at a curation of the New York Times bestseller list that looked at a breakdown of the racial makeup of debuting authors specifically. It is shameful. It is embarrassing. And I just can't help but see how this affects BookTube. I gotta bring it back to like where I'm at with you right now. I see the diversity makeup of the publishing industry reflected in BookTube, specifically in who gets big on BookTube and who gets seen on BookTube. Like, it literally took this month for me to realize I wasn't following any Black booktubers, and I didn't know of any. I feel like this is the insidiousness of white supremacy and systemic racism specifically, is that it just worms its way into your life so deeply. It shapes the way not just that you see the world, but in whose world you see. If the books that are published by people who do not share in the Black experience and so do not value it, do not understand it, do not think that it is valuable to share past the sharing of Black trauma. Overwhelmingly, I think in queer lit, you see a lot of the same problems where what publishers are willing to publish are the parts of the queer experience that they know, which is queer suffering. And I think that overwhelmingly, the publishing industry is more willing to publish stories about Black suffering than it is to publish stories about Black people living their lives. And I think that's just something to meditate on. I'll see you in a little bit. Hi, look, what good as hell. You're right. Hi, hello. Let's talk about oppression. So I've been wanting to talk to y'all all day, which is a change and a half because I haven't been wanting to talk to y'all all month. So progress, I've been percolating on some stuff that I wanted to, like, the more that I thought about it last night, the more I wanted to express it to you. Really two main things. The takeaway from what I am learning about the publishing industry, diversity wise, I think is that everything is interconnected. When the publishing industry is made up of mostly cis, straight, white women. That's who controls what stories get told, what stories get marketed, what authors get published, who gets invited to press events. What happens is that the community that starts to participate in that industry online starts to reflect what is seen as a product of that industry. Industries create products, and non-diverse industries create non-diverse products. I have not read a lot of literature by Black authors comparatively. I just haven't. I've definitely read more work by white authors. Now, part of that is availability, but part of that is that I subconsciously gravitate to those stories. Not only are they available in greater abundance, but also they are marketed better. They are more visible. They are more talked about. Everything is cyclical. Everything is interconnected. It all informs everything else. So with that in mind, there are stories that I simply have not read. When I'm going through these compilations, one of the things that I realize is how much I am not tapped into the rich tapestry of the Black experience. There are so many different permutations of what it means to be Black. And I am tapped into maybe 5% of them because that's what I have had access to. That isn't to say that now that I'm going out and looking on my own, that I can't gain access. And I do think that if you rest on your laurels, leave it at that, that, well, I haven't traditionally had access to these things. People didn't bring them to me. I think that that is lazy, and I think that that is not sufficient. I think it's true. As a cis white girl, people have not brought me stories of Blackness, but I think that that sets the onus on me to find them. I am aghast at the fact that I can't think of the last book I read by an Indigenous author. It may have been a year or two since I read a work by an Indigenous author, which for the record was Rebecca Roanhorse's debut. And that is based on those authors not getting published, not getting marketed, but it's also based on me, because if that's something that's important to me, it's my job to pursue it. Which kind of leads into the second thing that I want to talk about. I don't want accolades for being an ally. I don't want to be an ally. I want to be an accomplice. I want to be taking action for the betterment of mankind. I don't want likes and subscriptions. I don't care about those. I didn't put together this reading project so that you guys would think I was a good person. I did this to do right by myself. I know who I am. I know what my values are. I don't want you guys to feel like I have anything to prove to you. Not to disrespect you. I'm inviting you to bear witness to a project I assigned myself, to my findings that I found myself. I didn't go to anyone and ask for a reading list. I didn't go to anyone and ask for approval of what I was doing or for them to make me feel better about the part that I play in the vast tapestry that is white supremacy. And again, I don't want accolades for that either. I think that's the bare fucking minimum that you do in this project to find and celebrate Black queer art. I have found myself lacking, and that is something personal to me, and it's something that I am going to take effort to fix, because I think that there's something wrong with that. I think that that means I miss out on a rich, deep well of human experience. I miss out on that art. Not I'm a bad person for not finding and knowing about it and enjoying it. This is gonna be a weird reading vlog. Like, I see all of these people reading nonfiction anti-racist texts, and I want that to be going on. I do, but I also feel like that's the beginning. That's the door you open into a antebellum mansion of nonsense and antiquated baggage that you carry as a white person. That's the first step. Like, if you're not doing more than that, you're missing out, frankly. And on like something that I think is so vital as a person, which is to experience in life the perspective and the art of as many people as possible. I think that if I were to define my life goals, that's a pretty big one. That's up there. The world is too big to spend all of your time enjoying white art. So with that in mind, I'm gonna finish this compilation, which I still haven't told you about it. Shit, oh shit, hold on. So as I've said before, I'm about 50% through A Phoenix First Must Burn. I've read 8 stories so far. Let me talk about my favorites. So the first one is a story by Rebecca Roanhorse, which is called Wherein Abigail Fields Recalls Her First Death and Subsequently Her Best Life. I do really enjoy her writing. The Abigail Fields story is explicitly queer and it is super fun. I definitely think it capitalizes on Rebecca's strength in establishing folkloric atmosphere. It's like simultaneously vengeful and spooky. It definitely, I think, captures the horror of what happens to the protagonist very, very well and very succinctly. Abby is like absolutely somebody that you totally root for. She's kind of perfect marriage between hyper feminine and also very angry, which for some reason I identify with. I'm just gonna read from my notes now. There's something affecting about a story where one partner is ready to move on from grief and vengeance and the other isn't yet, but they get there at their own pace, partially because they realize how much they want to be with the other person. I thought it was a great story. I thought it was a really good story, specifically about grief and about how anger can keep you from reaching the catharsis that you need and you don't actually owe anybody anything. Another one I really liked was Gilded by Elizabeth Acevedo. I wrote in my notes, what if Magneto was instead an enslaved black girl? I would love Magneto is the answer. Really liked this one. Strong characterization, strong sense of atmosphere. I think in a lot of stories like that, it's really difficult to picture what their day-to-day life would have been like. And I feel like Gilded really captures a sense of that. Like you really get a sense of not only like how long the days stretch, but like what is actually included in there. Like how the time is actually spent and how people relate to each other in that situation. And I thought it was very good. It's straight, but I liked it. I think the one that I've liked most tonally is Melly by Justina Ireland. Super cute, has a fat black girl as the protagonist. It's really a story that's all about shaking off mistreatment by white authority figures and learning to trust your own judgment. And I think that's just fucking dope. Definitely don't have an experience of it in a racial capacity, but I definitely know on some level what it's like to have to grow past the mistreatment of others and learn to trust and believe in yourself when nobody else has done that for you in the past. Also, there are killer unicorns in this one, so that's pretty cool. In general, I'm really liking it. It's given me a great opportunity to engage with a lot of writers that I haven't otherwise had access to. The stories that they are interested in telling are so good and just rich with emotion and like strong senses of like the stories that they're trying to tell. It's been slow going because of my current emotional state, not because the stories are not really riveting. I'm in the middle of one right now that's about an emo teenage black girl. It's really cool to see like emo black girl representation, fucking finally. It is about an emo black girl who meets a vampire who's also a black girl and they fall in love. So it's like 5 o'clock and I'm gonna see if I can read some more. I'm probably gonna take my hair down because it's starting to hurt. I've had it like this all day. Yeah. Hi, what's good? What's up? It's the 2nd of July and I have done what I came here to do. As it turns out, you can still set goals and accomplish them. What a wonderful time to be alive. The end of A Phoenix First Must Burn, way gayer than the first half. I think maybe I spoke too soon, which is becoming a trend for me. I can say without a doubt that the latter half contained way more queer stories and way more, I wouldn't necessarily say stories that I liked more, but my favorite story in here was in the back half. And before you ask, it's Tenderheaded by Danny Lore, which is just an amazing story about a queer black girl learning that it's not her job to take care of people and that her worth and her worthiness of love doesn't come from her ability to provide for others. It features an amazing relationship that is mutually respectful and affectionate and cathartic and healing with a non-binary partner who loves and respects her. And it's also an acknowledgement of the fact that when you are mistreated in life, sometimes your anger about the inequality of your situation can come out at people who don't deserve it. I literally have a note in here as soon as I figured out her partner was non-binary where I just said, ooh. I don't read a ton of short stories, so I think part of my experience with this compilation and with Out Now was just kind of getting a feel for how to tell short stories effectively. You know, some authors do it in this compilation a little bit better than others. I definitely learned that there is a way to have a twist in a short story, and there is a way to not have a twist in a short story. Definitely one of the weaker stories, I think, was The Actress by Danielle Page, which just came a fucking mile a minute. It was the first, and I really think only story in this compilation that I like outright did not like. Like, the story is just way too big. There were a few stories in here that I read and I was like, man, I wish this was a novel instead of a short story. This is the only short story that I read where I was like, this really should have been a novel instead of a short story, as in it doesn't work as a short story. The twists just don't work when there's no time to establish a status quo, when there's no time to establish your sense of who the characters are and what their reality is like. And short stories just don't have a ton of space to do that. And so for any story to have twists that work, you have to do a very good job of very quickly establishing tone and character in a way that I just don't think this story did very well. There were stories that did it a lot better. Literally the story that comes right afterward by Ashley Woodfolk, The Curse of Love, amazing at doing this. It sets up the premise instantly. The twist is threaded throughout in a way that's just so artful. Like, I can't tell you too much about the story without completely spoiling it. The story vacillates between being first person and third person, which I'd never seen done before and which I thought was really, really interesting to both give you an internal and external perspective on the protagonist and the characters in the story. Very interesting. I think I can blanket statement say that the compilation is solid. I highly recommend it. I'm gonna basically go down the list and see if I can find the authors that I like best. I can find work by them, and I'm very excited about it. I feel like it's given me like a whole list of people to pull from in terms of like what I do next. It's actually almost 9 o'clock, which is late for me, so I'm actually gonna get ready to go to bed. You know what? I'm really proud of myself. The second novel that I ordered still is not here, so it'll show up probably next month and I'll get to read it for July. I am happy with this as a start because I do want to emphasize that like this is a good place to start. For anybody who is coming into this for the first time, first of all, welcome. Thank you for opening your eyes. Thank you for starting to do the very hard work of unlearning a lot of your internalized biases. I am still doing that hard work. It is work that never ends. Try always to be better and understand that this is a fight that never ends. It is not 1 month of your life. It is not even 1 year. It is forever until things change. And I mean radically. I don't mean one thing changes. I mean the whole fucking system changes. And until that point, I think it is important to, in equal measure, defend Black lives, listen to Black people about their experience, fight for their experience to be better, and celebrate the art that they create. I think all of those things are important. I don't know that you can do one without doing the other. I think that a celebration of Black art that doesn't come from a position of defense of the worthiness of Black people to exist and acknowledgement of the system that we live in and its inherent racism, white supremacy, corruption, cruelty to people, and a vigorous desire
to fight and overthrow the powers that be, and in so doing create a world in which it is safe for Black folks to exist. I don't think you can do any one of those things in isolation. That is my personal opinion. And I am like very, very on my soapbox right now. And I want to like state for the record, like I am not here to talk over Black folks. I am here to speak to non-Black people specifically about how to be accomplices in dismantling racist power structures. And I only do so by passing along information that I have gleaned from listening to Black folks. Every time I turn on my camera lately, it just gets increasingly real. So cool. I'm gonna be donating to some charities. I will list them at the end of the video.
One step at a time. One step at a time, baby. Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to the end of the vlog. You did it. You made it. It's been a long journey, I know. And also a fairly intense one. This one I know was not as funny or light as my previous ones have been. Previous one has been. Eventually I will be able to refer to a plurality of these videos. You've already heard all of my thoughts on the things that I read, so let me share my thoughts instead on this real life event that we are all experiencing together. I think the inherent question for a lot of non-Black people is, why do this work? It is hard. It induces intense feelings of shame and guilt and grief. It is apparently never ending. It involves looking at something that infests every area of your life that you didn't design but that you may benefit from. It involves admitting your complicity in systems that you did not have any part in building. And it involves an intense interrogation of self that, again, never ends. So why do that? Why do that work? Why make this vlog? Why do this project? I do not believe that there is a perfect world out there. I don't believe that there are perfect people. I believe that there is a better world that we can work on building together. I believe that there is a better me out there in the future if I continue doing this work. And I think that if you don't do this work, you actively contribute to evil in the world. I'm pretty open with my political beliefs. I don't think there's anything political about this. And I think if you do, you're wrong. Supporting the civil rights of others is not a political position. It is a moral position. I don't know how to break that down for you if that's not something that you understand, but assuming that it is, I think you have a moral obligation to do this work in whatever way that you can. I personally do not feel physically safe to go outside right now. I don't have a lot of money. I have a single brain cell that just kind of rattles around my head like a frozen pea. Even so, this is work that I am capable of doing. And if I can do it, you can do it. And you must. This is work that is absolutely vital for the world to become a place that is worth living in. This world is incredibly unjust to so many people. And if you do not take action on their behalf, what are you doing? If you are on the bench, what are you doing?
I was over on the bench. And what did you do? Nothing, I was over on the bench.
I'm going to provide a lot of ways for you personally to actually do something good today. My hope is that having come along with me on this journey, you will be ready and willing to help. Because that's what this is about. It's not about making people think that I'm a good person. It's not about showing everybody how woke I am. It's about helping people, real people who need our help. I have a tiny platform. I have 77 subscribers right now, but 77 people is not no one. So underneath this video in the doobly-doo, you're gonna find some donation links. I have specifically looked for charities that are close to me, that are small, that are doing hard work, organizing near me, taking care of folks near me, making my community a better place. I want to empower them to do that. And I've shared the links with you so that you can help also. I'm also going to find and provide a listing of phone numbers for your local representatives. Call them and ask them to defund your local police force, because no organization that sanctions violence against Black bodies in the way that the police force currently does should be allowed to exist. Certainly not in the way that it currently does. Also, in the interest of addressing how systemic racism informs your feed, I've also shared a list created by one of my favorite Black creators, the Artisan Geek, on diverse booktubers you can follow, and probably should. Not because you feel an obligation to, but because you might not have seen them before and they might be your new favorite person. That is all of the work that I can do for right now, but as I've said, this work never ends. I fully intend to continue doing work on my channel and on myself, and I hope that you do too. Thank you for coming on this very wild journey with me. I'll see you in the next one.
I remember
I remember